Hello and welcome back to CBR MTG. My name is Angus Mackay. I'm joined here with Jacob Golding.
Hi.
And Andrew Vance.
Hello.
And we're trying something a little bit different this time. We're playing Highlander. This is Australian 7-point Highlander. Please go to the link into the description to get a brief rundown on what the Highlander format is. Today we're playing at Cancon in Canberra at Exhibition Park. This is a national event and we are playing the National Highlander Championships, something that Australia and Canberra holds very dear to our hearts. On our left we have Jacob playing his Zeroth Law of Robotics, and on Hannah's side we have Elves. So Jacob, could you run us through the deck? What makes it tick?
Yeah, so I've been playing Affinity in Modern for about 2 years now. Having a lot of fun with that, a lot of success, enjoying learning the lines of that deck and getting better at playing it. And I've also been looking at getting into Highlander for quite a while. I've borrowed a few decks, played in a few events, had moderate success with that, and I thought I might try my hand at brewing. So this list is kind of an amalgamation of many different artifact-based lists from all sorts of formats in Magic. There are definitely some modern cards, there are some cards from old standards, and it functions a little bit like a vintage Ravager shops in the aggressive, fast mana, high density of cheap artifacts into payoff cards that get better the more artifacts you have. Yeah.
And personified with the aggro strategy with this Bomat Courier coming down, a standard favourite at the moment.
Yeah.
A 1/1 with haste, and it has the ability when you attack, you put a card from the top of your library, exile it, and then you can pay red and sacrifice Bomat Courier to get to discard your hand and draw the cards that you have exiled from Bomat Courier.
Yeah.
Good little thing to pump up your hand back up in a aggressive deck.
Yeah, later on in the game, which you'll see happens in this game, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. We see on Hannah's side, she's playing a known archetype of Australian Highlander, which is Elves. Vance, could you sort of go through this one and tell us about it?
Sure. So, Elves is a deck that was first popularised by Lachlan Wordsmith, a master brewer of the format. The variant Hannah's playing is known as Elf D, because it has a lot of land destruction in it, as seen by the Thermocast that was just used. So her points are things like Wasteland and Strip Mine are 3 of her points, and then she's got Crop Rotation, Survival of the Fittest, Natural Order, and
Green Sun Zenith.
Green Sun Zenith, of course. So her plan is to use her mana to stunt her opponent's mana growth and then accelerate out enormous threats like Primeval Titan or the game-ending Cradlehoof Behemoth.
Yeah, for sure. Working very pretty similar, I suppose, to the legacy version of Elves, but I think this might be at heart like a ramp deck, you know, like
absolutely.
She's playing a Dork on turn 1, a Dork on turn 2, and then blowing it up.
2 turns.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like this.
Yeah.
Her plan is to generate way more mana than her opponent can cope with to power out those super powerful threats, and also to prevent her opponent from doing very much by thermocasting and wastelanding all their hopes and dreams away.
Yeah, exactly. This version notably cheaper than the usual version of Elves, which spends a few points on Mox. So Mox being about 3 point each. Moxen, we have Mox Emerald and Mox Pearl is in some of the usual lists or a variation of that, but this one's sort of just using those points on land destruction.
Yeah. And I mean, Elves is one of the most powerful decks in the format. It was one of the primary reasons for the Moxes to go from being 2 points to 3 points, because allowing it to have 2 Moxes and then 3 spare points to spend on whatever it wanted just made the deck way too fast and way too consistent.
For sure.
So I'm trying to enact a similar plan with my points in the Affinity build. In terms of playing a lot of fast mana, I've got Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, and Mishra's Workshop. And I'm also rounding that off with an Umezawa's GT as one of the most powerful equipments in the game. It's an artifact. It goes on many of my evasive threats quite well. So that's similar, I think, in terms of the points of the fast mana, which...
How much equipment are you running in this? Because I see an equipment sitting on your Frogmite right now.
Yeah, Bone Splitter. So I'm running a little bit of equipment. That it's not too much of a theme. There's the Bone Splitter, there's Cranial Plating, of course. There's Umezawa's GT, and there's also Flare Husk, which is a 1 mana 1/1 living weapon equipment.
Okay, interesting.
So I wasn't the first person to try this list out. As Lachlan Wardsmith, the same guy,
Master Brewer of the format.
Yep, creator of Elves.
He's tried most things.
Yeah. He tried this out a number of years ago. I heard about this kind of midway through me building this deck, and had a couple of discussions with him. His original list did feature a lot more equipment, so he was playing more of the swords, which I think I might try 1 or 2 of them in the future. But his was more focused on those equipment. Yes.
Yeah, great. And we see this finally the Bomac Courier kind of taking a back seat because Hannah's one of her. It's not necessarily a win con by any means, but it definitely slows down a lot of her opponents with the Hornet Queen making 4 1/1 insects with flying and death touch. So Bomac Courier finally taking a bit of a back seat.
Yeah. I actually I made a bit of a misplay on turn 3 here. I think I miscounted my mana slightly and could have played the Ether Grid. Instead I equipped the Bone Splitter with the Frogmite so that it could attack. I'm not sure if that would have changed the game, but it might have slowed down her getting her Hornet Queen down. As we see here, she had the
Ghazali
Pride Mage, exactly, to get rid of my Girapi Ether Grid.
Yeah, that Girapi Ether Grid would have been so important for this matchup.
Yeah, it's proven to be really powerful out of the sideboard in Modern Affinity.
Absolutely.
And it's with kind of the nature of Highlander, people kind of playing a more diverse range of cards. There's not many decks that don't have some things to pick off with it. And even if they don't, it's often a powerful tool in winning into the late game when they've been able to deal with all of my creature-based threats.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of turns on a lot of the stuff that was never turned on in the first place. Like, in the late game, having so much mana and nothing to do with it, like finally just pinging them for 1 really sort of sends them back.
You can also notice there that my Bone Splitter is tapped. That's not a mistake. You can tap the equipment for Girapi Ether Grid, which is something that's quite useful at times.
A nice useful thing in the Affinity, in the Modern Affinity as well.
It's very interesting to see Affinity being a viable deck here in Highlander. I know a bunch of other people have tried it before. Colin from Wollongong's tried it as well. Are there any recent additions that you think have made it, put it over the top to being playable?
Yeah, so definitely Kaladesh block being an artifact-based block has given me a bunch more cards. So obviously Girapi Ether Grid, which wasn't from that, was from Origins, but we've already discussed about the power of that. There's also things like Hangerback Walker, Walking Ballista, Bomac Courier, and Foundry Inspector and Chief of the Foundry. I'm not entirely sold on Foundry Inspector. It's still one of the cards which I'm working out. But there are definitely a bunch more cards that have been printed recently that do fit into this deck.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they are really just helping towards the high density of efficient, cheap creatures that you get to play.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the synergy is incredible. Just having those, the Foundry Inspector being able to lower the mana cost of essentially all of your cards. We see you finally getting the benefit of that Bomac Courier once it's given its life. You've been able to draw the cards off it just to refill your hand.
Done a decent amount of damage. I was able to attack and sack before damage just to get that extra card. And those cards really are important in me being able to push through this. So
this barrage of flying insects coming at you.
Yeah, so Hannah's just trying to attack with as much as she can, but definitely against an unknown deck, I think leaving back a large number of creatures just to make sure that if I have anything, I can't quite push through.
Yeah, and I mean your life totals are so slow. Like you could blow her out, which is the problem. Like she could probably leave it up at least 1 just in case there's some surprise, but I think she needs to start turning the corner now. She
definitely.
finally has a chance where you're a little bit sedated by the recent Frogmite and the
Yep.
Makuri are being taken out, but like, you know, she needs to spend this time very wisely, you know, just to get back.
Yeah, so here you see Arcbound Ravager costing 1 mana, thanks to the Foundry Inspector, and Ravager, you know, it's fantastic in Modern, it's fantastic in the Vintage Ravager shops, and it's
multi-format all-star.
Yeah. Especially here where you're able to play with the artifact lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been an all-star in pretty much every format it's ever been in.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, Arcbound Ravager is a 2-mana 0/0, but it has modular. So when it comes into the battlefield, it gets 1/1/1 counter, and when it leaves the battlefield, you can put that +1/+1 counter on an artifact creature.
Yep.
You also have the ability to sacrifice an artifact and give it a +1/+1 counter. So a huge option in Modern Affinity from my time playing it as well, just being able to go in for that one kill where you sacrifice all your artifacts onto Ravager and then sacrifice the Ravager to itself to use that modular trigger, but just a huge play in all formats. Yeah.
And so Hannah here really does need to kind of put on the brakes for the attacks, because if even one of my creatures get through, then basically the number of artifacts I have in play is how much damage I will be dealing with that creature.
Yeah, absolutely.
You sack them all to Ravager, you sacrifice Ravager to itself, and then you move all of those +1/+1 counters onto the last unblocked creature.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're just probably just attempting to go wide at this point.
Yep.
Being able to play this Dryad Arbor is pretty good for her, because you only have one flying threat at the moment. But this might be enough.
It's a Galvanic Blast to take out her last untapped flyer, and that's going to let me get in with the Ornithopter.
This could be lethal. This is one.
I'm pretty sure this is lethal. Yeah,
4,
and
5.
then I draw the cranial plating anyway.
Yes, the cranial plating.
Yeah. I am unfortunately known for taking quite a long time to double and triple check my maths for dealing lethal. Some of my opponents get a little bit frustrated. I do apologize if I have ever played you and sat there for 10 minutes figuring out if I have lethal.
It's a surprisingly intricate deck for
Definitely.
in the modern Affinity version, because it's a low to the ground aggro deck, but I mean it still does, like, there's a lot of decision trees that need to be made about whether or not especially whether or not you're willing to go all in on that one.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly. And it's a bit of an easier decision to make in Highlander, given that there is less removal spells overall, I think,
absolutely.
that are
absolutely
able to deal with certain things.
Absolutely.
But definitely in Modern, if someone's got a white mana or a black mana untapped,
you can't do it.
You just can't.
In regards to sideboards, just quickly, we're gonna on Hannah's side we have Nissa, Voice of Zendikar. That's not correct. Sorry, a Walking Ballista, Carnage Tyrant, Arachnogenesis, Creeping Corrosion, Kitchen Finks, Absolute Law, Master of the Wild Hunt, Rest in Peace, Fairy Macabre, Eidolon of Rhetoric, Viridian Emissary, Terrastodon, Containment Priest, Choke, and Carpet of Flowers.
So I'm playing Trinisphere, Sphere of Resistance, Thorn of Amethyst, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, Relic of Progenitus, Grafdigger's Cage, Whip Flare, Spell Pierce, Stubborn Denial, Winter Orb, Magus of the Moon, Blood Moon, Wear Tear, Spellskite, and Fragmentize.
Okay. Still trying to sort of maybe channel the Modern Affinity list in that aspect as well, with the 2 moon effects coming out of the board and the and the Spell Pierce and the Stubborn Denial.
Traditionally a powerful strategy in Highlander, especially when people are taxing their mana bases quite a lot to play high impact multicolored cards.
Absolutely.
And you know, it served me well throughout this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've also got some kind of sphere effects, taxing effects, to transition more into the vintage shop stack with those.
Yep.
And so here I board in, I believe, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, and then Whip Flare.
Okay.
So Thalia just as a threat that can get through on the ground. I take out some things like Memnite and Frogmite, which although they're, you know, perfectly fine cards that fit in within the theme of the deck, can't really break through all of the mana dorks that Hannah's playing out. Whip Flare also just deals 2 damage to
one-sided wrath,
non-artifact creatures.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Kills all
a
the
bit of a
idiots.
non-bow with Thalia, but you know, Thalia also potentially able to slow down crop rotation or her land destruction. or just different. Also, most of the, or a large number of the sideboard cards, I'm assuming she'll bring in against me,
Yes.
are going to be non-creature artifact removal. She, as we saw, already has Quasale Pride Mage in the main as a creature answer to my artifacts, and probably has a Reclamation Sage as well, I would assume.
Sure does.
So, in regards to Hannah's side, I'm definitely... unfortunately, you get a lot of splashback from Highlander red shops, which is a very popular archetype in this format as well. But so you get a little bit of splashback from that, unfortunately. So you will possibly be copying this Creeping Corrosion, the two green destroy all artifacts sorcery.
It'd be pretty surprising if Hannah didn't side that in.
And we can probably surmise bringing in the Walking Ballista as well, being pretty good at... I mean, if she has like a bunch of mana, it's like perfect top text. She can just take out all your little
Throw
creatures.
down a bunch of my guys.
Yeah. Also has
especially
protection
relevant.
from... Yeah, go on.
Especially relevant that some of my most powerful payoff cards, like Cranial Plating, don't buff the toughness of my creatures. And also with Arcbound Ravager, there is a window where it is vulnerable and I have to choose the target, and that can be picked off with a Walking Ballista. So
absolutely.
aiming at low toughness is definitely something that is perfectly fine, even with all of my payoff cards.
I'd also expect her to probably side in Kitchen Finks, just because you're extremely aggressive. And depending on how much she has to side out, Arachnogenesis might be a
What's
quite useful
what's
thing against you.
Arachnogenesis do?
So Arachnogenesis is, I think it's a 3 mana instant that puts a 1/2 spider into play for every attacking creature, and then prevents all damage that would be... all combat damage that would be dealt by non-spider creatures this turn. So you just summon a horde of spiders, eat whatever's attacking you, and you've got 3 to 6 1/2s that can attack. And take over the game.
That's actually a fantastic
It's
card. It's a fog with upside.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's from one of the commander sets, and people are nearly always surprised by it because it's.
I certainly
that's a Lachlan Ward-Smith
was
special.
not trying to play around it in this. Maybe I will in the future.
The benefit of your deck, I mean, not as much in your deck as it is in sort of other constructed that you can play 4 ofs, but you're playing a lot of things that are hard to block. You're playing a lot of creatures, Force of Hope of Girapur, and Ornithopter.
Roterothopter from Homelands is a 1 mana O2 flyer, and you can pay 2 mana to give it +1/+0 until end of turn, but you can only activate that ability twice in a turn.
Oh my gosh. The perfect card.
So obviously there are a lot of cards in the deck which I'm not sure if they're good enough. I do think Roterothopter is good enough. I think that having an evasive threat is important enough for the deck that you are willing to play it. It
Absolutely.
is a 1 mana flyer is the important words
Yeah,
on
is
that
the
card,
text that
while
matters.
also being an artifact.
Yeah, because then you can equip Cranial Plating to it, or Bone Splitter, or your other equipment.
Or a number of the lords just getting in constantly.
And it just lets you turn it into a reasonable sized flying threat.
Just quickly on sideboard cards, I would not recommend that anyone register this deck list if they don't want to lose to sideboard cards. And that goes for Modern Affinity too. You're playing an artifact-based deck. Artifacts, aside from the graveyard, are probably the most hated against strategy in Magic in terms of very powerful, narrow sideboard cards.
But that's also because it's very popular.
Exactly.
People play it a lot, so people sideboard accordingly. And
Right.
that's what's kept the Modern Affinity sort of away from the ban list, is that,
if you want to win against it, you can.
Yeah.
You can load your sideboard with a bunch of cards that will kill it.
Absolutely.
So here we get the extra text of Darksteel Citadel coming in handy against Hannah's Wasteland, which is going to let me continue to play out spells and not be so affected by her land destruction.
We see an island in your hand as well. What are what's the color breakup in your main board?
So it's mainly blue-red.
Okay.
There is a little bit of black for Disciple of the Vault, Scrapheap Scrounger, and the activation on Cranial Plating. But mainly, and this is kind of another main difference between my build and Ward Smith's old build,
Sure.
is his was more focused on the colors. I've tried to be as colorless as possible, only playing colored cards which are impactful enough. This means that I get to play more of the artifact lands, but it does mean that my mana base can be quite painful at times.
Yeah. Think I see an Edge Champion in your hand. This is could be an absolute blowout against Hannah.
So that's what I'm trying to build up to here, and that's why I think I might have some Fast Martyr in my hand, but I've opted to play the plating because you really want to get to having 3 other artifacts along with your champion, and that. At that point, it would take 3 removal spells, or she needs to deal with 3 or 2 other things before she can deal with my champion.
Yeah, exactly. And, just the Ducksteel Citadel being very hard for her to get rid of. We're seeing on Hannah's side, she's just playing out this Garruk Relentless, making a wolf and then passing the turn. This could actually be pretty hard for you now because she's always going to swing with this Voice of Resurgence because you're never going to block it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because every turn that you leave her, her board's just going to get bigger and bigger, and that elemental token is going to be very hard for you to get rid of. Even the Edge Champion now being a 1/2 9/2, yes, a huge
with protection
creature.
From all colors.
Yes, that's exactly what you need.
For 3 mana. It's a good card.
Good card. Yeah, notably good card. Especially good in, this format we had a very large percentage of control decks because it was just a good deck. You know, the meta called for it.
And Grixis Control has become more and more popular over the last few months in particular, I think.
It's just a very fun deck to play as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a bit of experience testing against it, especially with this deck, because a good friend of mine, Aiden Frisch, who was Highlander National Champion a few years ago and has been playing Grixis forever, and probably will be until all of the cards are banned. So I've played this a lot against that type of spot removal counterspells Grixis deck, and Edge Champion is always fantastic. Have you considered any amount of tutors to sort of help you out, or are you happy to just stay low to the ground and take what comes? So this is something, so I'm currently at the moment even talking with Lord Smith more, and also about with Philip Nicholson, who's also been interested in the deck, about how we can improve it, and some things, Trophy Mage and Trinket Mage, and also Stoneforge Mystic, although Stoneforge has got a point. And I think that the power level in general of the cards is just at the point where you don't necessarily need the tutors. And the power level of the tutors on their own, they don't really fit with the plan well enough. Also, the fact that they have colored symbols in their mana cost makes them
a little bit harder.
A bit harder.
Yeah, because your deck it's powerful, but most of the individual cards, some of the individual cards, you've got a Soul Ring and a Cranial Plating and play are great, but a lot of the individual cards are fairly interchangeable, which diminishes the importance of a tutor. Plus, because of the nature of 7-point Highlander, as you were saying, Stoneforge Mystic is a point, so if you put it in, you've got to cut the Jit which it fetches, or the Soul Ring or the Mana Crypt.
So we were originally playing Mana Vault over the Jit, but it was a little bit unimpressive. Quite good with Espezoa, which is a fun card. It's a 2 and a blue 4/3 flyer. It's an artifact, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you need to bounce an artifact to your hand. So that lets you rebuy the Mana Vault without having to spend the mana to untap it. But it was just a little bit. It was 1 turn of explosiveness, which sometimes was enough. But I think that the power level of Umezawa's Jite just kind of pushes it over the top.
Absolutely. I think the Jit is just an all-star. Like the points make a lot of sense because Jit is a very, very powerful card, and even bringing in, even being able to sort of find it here, I was just thinking it would be like a fantastic thing if we could get it. But
so unfortunately, this game, I think, it kind of got away from me a little bit, despite the fact that I had a 9/2 with protection from all colors on turn 3. Hannah's board with the two Garuks just got a little bit too wide for me, and I was just a little bit too slow and couldn't attack through. So I spent last turn dealing with one of her Garuks, the one that can overrun all of her guys, because I was just dead to that. And yeah, unfortunately here, not having a 2-turn clock with the champion not being able to quite find enough artifacts to pump up the cranial plating is what lost me this game, I think.
And so I think what happened on Hannah's turn was Garrick Relentless fought her own Voice of Resurgence to give herself a giant token.
And
That's
she
a
played
great
Titania.
line. The Voice of Resurgence is huge at the moment, being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. And then we get to flip Garuk as well, and then following it up with Titania, like she wasn't pulling any punches that game.
And one of the other, I guess, one of the weaknesses of the deck, we were talking about color requirements. I did have a Whip Flare in my hand then, which and a Go Ether Grid. But Whip Flare would have been really good, but I just couldn't quite find the red mana to cast it. And that is again something else which I've been looking at with the deck is would it be more beneficial to transition to more of a traditional mana base of jewels and fetchers and stuff? Would that make it better or more reliable? And I'm still having a look at that and figuring out where I want to go with the deck.
Well, I mean, it's one of the joys of Highlander is that it is really it's very much a brewer's format.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can do well picking up a deck that someone else has built, much like in any format, but there's a lot of value to be gained out of finding your own lane, working at it for a long time, and coming up with something sweet like Highlander robots.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's what drew me to the format in originally anyway, was that I had a bunch of cards from Legacy. I was like, oh, I'll just push it into Highlander, make a reanimator deck, and like there was like a community, already established community that like helped me make it, and we brewed it together and we lent each other cards and stuff like that. And like now I'm going to Cancon with a huge pack of cards. It's like if you need to borrow decks and you borrow cards, you can come to me. Like, and that's what brings a lot of people to Magic in general. But it's like I feel like it's hugely personified with everyone wanting to play jank, or everyone wanting you have the capability to play any janky brew that you want.
The number of cards that are playable in Highlander is very, very large.
Very bizarre.
And one of the other advantages in terms of building a community is if you've got 2 or 3 or 5 people who've got a legacy collection, they can probably build 4 or 8 decks each, because suddenly their 4 Underground Seas go in 4 different decks.
That's right.
And you do need to find some of the weirder cards that exist out there to
Roterothopter.
to fill out your mana base or to fill out your curve. You can't just play. I mean, I play Zoo. I can't just play 4 Kurt Apes. But when you're playing Naya Zoo, there's actually sort of 5 different Kurt Apes that you can play, and you've just got to go looking for these things that fit what you're trying to do.
And also, in terms of borrowing cards, I also obviously borrowed a large number of cards from this deck, and that was hugely helpful. And the Canberra community is great. Tim Evers especially lent me a bunch of cards for this deck.
Shout out to Tim Evers.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And yeah, as you said, brewing this, I spent quite a lot of time brewing this with Aidan Frisch and James O'Rourke, 2 of my good friends.
And that really helps, that's like that's part of the community. A wonderful part of it for sure.
They weren't too encouraging when I first suggested the idea. But, once I beat them over the head a couple of times.
What are friends for?
They came around.
Exactly.
We're seeing you take a very aggressive start once again with the Mishra's Factory into Vault Scourge. The 2 mana but has Phyrexian black mana in its mana cost. It's just a 1/1 with flying lifelink.
Always a 1-drop.
Always a 1-drop. Never not a 1-drop.
So here I get a fantastic draw of Mana Vault. And that's going to let me do something pretty absurd on this turn. So we're going to go Ancient Den, Mana Vault, Umezawa's GT, Equip GT, attack. This is turn 2 against Elves.
So is that Mana Vault or Mana Crypt?
That's a Mana Crypt.
Yeah, Mana Crypt.
So we're going to be taking damage for the rest of the game, but oh boy, if we didn't play a Jit and Equip on turn 2 on a lifelinker. Hannah's probably not looking very happy, not coming up very well against her Wild Growth that she played I mean, this Jitte, this is an insane play. This is like exactly what you could have wanted out of this because, and even getting at the turn before is probably exactly what you need because you're going to be spending, like you're probably never even going to pump the Vault Scourge. You're just going to kill Dork, kill Dork, kill Dork.
Yeah.
Well, although it's one of the beautiful things about Highlander is you do play cards like Wild Growth, and in a normal Elves deck in Legacy or Modern or whatever, you wouldn't look at Wild Growth. It's just not quite as good as a Llanowar Elf.
Yeah.
But in a format like Highlander, you're playing these slightly more obscure cards that are a little bit different, and sometimes they match up better against what your opponent happens to be doing.
Yeah,
because if it was Llanowar Elf, it would just be dead.
Exactly. It would be an even worse situation for Hannah to be in. So
absolutely.
Hannah takes some time in this game to try and think about how she's going to play around and through this.
It's just going to be so hard. Like,
Yeah.
she's like you can probably put another 2 counters on Jit and then just like start popping her for 3 or 4 or 5, you know. But like she's looking at her hand going, dork, 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 dork. How do I get around this? It's gonna take a little bit of wiggling coming out of her side. And we see you attempting to play out the City of Traders, possibly trying to power out this turn, even though you have the
just trying to, City of Traders is an interesting card. Trying to sequence when do I need the mana, when is it important to have this in play. I've got an Underground Sea in my hand, but I don't really need it. Something else about this deck is remember your triggers. There's a lot of triggers in the deck.
A lot of things
So
happening.
you see, I got my dice on the top of my deck box for the
Mana Crypt.
I've definitely received numerous warnings for forgetting silly things. Like, not bouncing an artifact to Esperzor. It's just, these aren't cards that you normally play with in tournament Magic a lot of the time.
Exactly.
And it's
going to be a hard one.
Hard to stay focused and on the ball, especially through a long day.
I mean, this was such a fantastic line. It started off with the Lonely Vault Scourge. And it ended up, and now you're on like Hangerback Walker on 2 and a Thalia, and like she's battling this up with a crop rotation, but it might just not be enough. Like she's if she can't even get a Dryad Arbor with this, because like if she's going to try and ramp out her mana.
She does get a Dryad Arbor because she feels that her only play is her only line is me forgetting to kill a Dryad Arbor.
That Umazawa's Jitte has text. Look, I'll give her a little bit of I'll give her some credit where credit's due, because you are in a position where you can just +1, +2, +2 your Vault Scourge, so it's not that unreasonable. However, however, it's probably like an okay idea just to test the waters. Like she's just gonna like put the Dryad Alba out there and just see what happens. But
and sometimes that's what you're gonna do. Like
you got to see where
in a position like this for Elves, where there's 3 counters, or there was 4 counters on the Jit. There's a Hangerback Walker.
There's now 3.
There's a Thalia. Like.
A
lot of things have to go wrong, and sometimes playing to your outs involves playing to your opponent, forgetting that they can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I certainly have been guilty of in the past, but thankfully I was able to stay alert enough throughout this last match of the day and the weekend. In fact,
Hangerback Walker is a very obvious inclusion in your deck, I believe. Do you have any synergies? Do you have anything that sacks besides the Ravager? Anything that turns on this Hangerback Walker?
No, but it's not really necessary.
Okay.
So Hangerback synergizes with things that add 2 mana to your mana pool, of which I have numerous.
You've got a lot.
It's just a really good card, which lets you do things with your mana if you need to. You can hang back with it, pun intended, or you can go ham and get them. And as you mentioned, it definitely works incredibly well with Arcbound Ravager. Both ways, either sacking the Hangerback to the Ravager or putting a bunch of counters on the Hangerback from the Ravager itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just being able to. I mean, the synergies with Arcbound Ravager is
Yeah.
huge, but even like I know that you're playing a Steel Overseer as well.
Yep.
I think that's probably all I can think of at this point, but that's huge.
Yep. I do think those are the only two cards that add +1/+1 counters
Okay.
and other things.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're seeing also coming out of your hand, now that you've finally got a bit of blue, you can possibly test out this charter course.
Yep.
Is that has that been giving you some good times when you've been testing with it?
It's quite good.
Okay.
So I'm playing a few draw spells in the list. I'm playing Thoughtcast, Perilous Research, Compulsive Research, not Perilous Research, sorry. The one that you discard an artifact, the instant speed one. Thirst for Knowledge.
Thirst for Knowledge,
and Charter Course. Charter Course is fantastic. It's 2 mana, draws you 2 cards every time.
Yeah, great. Everything you could
if
ever
I'm,
want.
If I'm not attacking, I've probably already lost the game.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Definitely reasonable.
And there are, even if I'm attacking but not dealing damage, so like, attack with a Signal Pest, attack with an Ornithopter, attack with a Roterothopter, there are so many ways that I can trigger the raid. And draw the cards.
This seems insane for you right now. Like, if you had to discard a card from it, definitely wouldn't be as good. But a 2 mana draw 2, very good.
It's just the sort of thing, just the sort of thing Affinity wants.
Yeah, absolutely. You're always turning your card sideways, so you may as well get the benefit of raid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Any other considerations coming out of Rivals or Ixalan?
Not really. So I haven't spent a lot of time looking through them, but there's nothing that has jumped out at me. I thought that potentially some of the treasure cards might do something, given that they produce a bunch of artifacts. But similarly to Clues out of Shadows over Innistrad, the cards that they're stabled to aren't quite as impactful or aggressive as I would like them to be.
Yeah, I guess Kaladesh gave you everything that you needed for the time being.
Definitely.
So unfortunately we saw Hannah just not being able to come back from that jet. That turn to equip jet was just everything that you needed from that game, and Hannah saw that probably a little bit earlier on, but she fought through very well. I did see a Creeping Corrosion coming out of her hand, but we're taking it out with you. This is your 4-2 at the moment. So a very respectable.
So I lost the first 2 rounds, and then managed to win out for the rest of the tournament.
Great, fantastic.
Yeah, which gives me hope for playing this deck in the future.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of fun. I'm definitely looking forward to workshopping it a bunch more with the likes of Wordsmith and a bunch of other people.
Yeah, great.
And
and that's fantastic. And we will be linking to the decks in the description. So if you want to check out Jacob Golding's Zeroth Law of Robotics or Hannah Neal's on Elf D, please feel free to check the description. Like, comment, subscribe, all that. And we will see you for our next round. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.